Hello, Earth Angel. I trust this is finding you enjoying your day. Thank you so much for giving me time here today to share a little guidance into how do you know when to take action? How do you know when to create? How do you know when to let something go? How do you know that guidance is coming through from your angels, from source, divine, or if it's something that is coming through that is being created more by the human mind in the sense like the human chatter, the human doubts, the human insecurities, or human thought that is not necessarily engaged with what's being inspired from and by the soul. So if you feel guided and you know of anybody who can benefit from this video, please feel free to share and let them know that it's being offered with love and also being offered from a place in which the divine is offering its love, its light, its clarity, and its inspiration. So what triggered this conversation for me today? I just got off the phone with a friend, and that's a question she asked. She's like, how do you know? How do you know what's being guided by source? How do you know what's being guided by divine? And how do you know that you're being encouraged to move a certain direction? And she, in her own experience, was sharing that sometimes she just feels confused. It's like she feels like she's getting intuitive hits to do certain things, but there's doubts and fears, and there's all these things that are coming up that she's like, I just don't know. Maybe it was my mind creating that, or maybe it was other things creating that, but I'm not sure if it's really coming from that light, that divine inspiration, that intuitive hit is coming from a higher source and a higher power. And it's really a great question. And the reason it's a great question, because there's so many of us that have this question, right? We're being shown things, we're connecting to things, but we're not taking the actions. We're not sure if this is something we need to commit to, or if it's just some fairy stuff going on in the head that's having us explore an idea or explore something that is not necessarily what would be best for us. And I recognize that this questioning comes up because we have had experiences, all of us have had experiences in which we felt strongly we were being guided, that we were doing the right thing, that we were being supported in taking certain steps and making certain things happen. And then we found ourselves either lost, confused, or somehow we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, this was a mistake. So I recognize that this questioning comes up from our experience, from our history showing us that in some way we might have not always been listening from a higher place. So that being said, it's interesting how our mind can be one of the most powerful things that can lead us into connecting intuitively to source, right? Because it's a portal. It's a way for us to interpret and understand what's being given to us, what's being encouraged, and what's coming from within us as well. But the mind can also be very tricky and mischievous as well, because if we're holding on to any fears, any doubts, any insecurities, those thoughts can play a role into us perceiving and receiving what is actually being given from that divine light and that divine source. So there's not a cookie cutter answer to this question. And I know for some of you that's like, Emily, no, give it to me. I want to know how it is. I get it. But the reason it's not a cookie cutter is because we're all so unique. Divine, our angels speak to us very differently. Some of you out there receive guidance as a knowing. You just know. It's a knowing that bypasses the mind. It's a knowing that bypasses emotion. It's a knowing that is just received and it's anchored within you in a way that can't be shaken. For me, and I'm starting with this one because that's actually one of my favorite ways to receive divine guidance. Because it really is very hard for a mind to talk itself out of a knowing. Unless we are very dedicated and we are very, let's say the word stubborn, and want to make it complicated. But for those of you, right, when we receive guidance that is a knowing, like you just feel it in your bones, when you receive that kind of guidance, it's really hard for us to talk ourselves out of stepping into that truth. So suggestions for those who get a knowing, for those who receive guidance through knowings. Go ahead and when you get a hit, when you get a download, when you receive guidance, write it down, record yourself, like I'm doing now. whether it's through the memo on your computer, the memo recorder, or a visual like the video, but just write or give voice to the knowing. Speak it. Put it on paper. Give it form where you're in that state of knowing, when you feel the energy, when that knowing is speaking through you. Because this is going to become your anchor. It's going to become the tool that you'll be able to turn to when you're deliberately moving forward with the guidance and the knowing that has been received. This is a way to bypass what some of our minds will try to do, which is talk ourselves out of it. Our mind will try, again, if you in any way have any doubt, fears, insecurities, or even other emotions like anger, resentment, dwelling somewhere in there, our mind will find a way to talk itself out of the knowing. So by you deliberately putting this on paper or giving it voice, it's gonna become your support into taking action to the knowing. To me, when people receive guidance through knowing, it's the easiest to know when and how to act. So if I was answering this for my friend who, let's say if for her she received hits in knowing, it's a lot easier to guide her into understanding this is how you know, because the knowing is something that can't be shaken off. It's present, it's vibrational, it's something that pretty much pulls you into action unless you deliberately choose to fight it along the way. Let's go look at another way of receiving guidance. Another way of receiving guidance that is one of my favorites is when I hear guidance audibly. When I hear guidance audibly, for me, it's a lot easier to take action, to know that this is being received from source itself. Thank you. And as I'm saying that, they're audibly saying be a little more specific. So I'm going to go ahead and express that a little better, because sometimes I know for me, I get audible guidance in chunks. So I'll be getting like certain words here or sentences. Sometimes I get paragraphs, which I like when they're paragraphs because it's a lot easier to decipher. But we get guidance audibly, and sometimes it doesn't make sense for our human mind. So in that occurs, the best thing you could do is, again, write it down, give it form, give it its expression. And it might be that depending on where you're at, the only way your mind can receive that guidance, that audible guidance, it's in chunks so that it doesn't trip over itself. So sometimes we might feel frustration, like, why can't I just get the sentence? Or why can't I get the whole storyline? Why can't I get the whole message in a chunk so I know what's going on here? But deliberately, sometimes the divine gives us guidance in chunks as we are being worked with and worked through, so that we can take action, so that we can explore what is being offered, so that we can celebrate the intuitive guidance that is being gifted to us. So how do you know when you get audible guidance? Well, a lot of times I recognize, I've talked to some people that they say, well, sometimes maybe it's my thoughts and that's why I'm hearing those things. So the best thing to do, and again, and this is how you know, the best thing to do is to be proactive in allowing yourself to receive guidance from a place of love. So the more you take time to commune in that truth, to engage in that truth, whether it's like 10 to 15 minutes a day of meditation or prayer or silence or breath, it allows you to become that portal of receiving, so that when guidance comes through, it can be nourished, it could be acted upon, it could be explored from a place of clarity and certainty, and a place of alignment. Thank you. And what they're audibly saying too, it's about noticing what emotions are triggered with what is being heard. And I know it's going to be interesting the way I'm going to describe the emotional part of this, but if you hear audible guidance, right, and you're not sure if it's like know if this is coming from a higher power. When guidance comes from divine, when guidance comes from our angels, there's a sense of peace that we feel with what we hear. There's a sense of surrender that is felt from the soul, which in turn is felt by the body, which in turn is felt by our heart, which in turn is felt by our mind. So when Source speaks to us, when Divine speaks to us, when the angels speak to us, there's a sense of peace with it. There's a sense of surrender. There's a sense of ease in the voice. I recognize that depending on where we're at and how much we are resisting what is being guided, we might feel a little like, oh my gosh, But that doesn't come till later. That doesn't come till later and much later. So it's about noticing the initial response that we feel, the initial response that is felt within all the self. Now, when you hear guidance or connect to audible guidance and you feel edgy, you feel like antsy, thank you, they're saying the word panic. Some of you might feel like the panicky and like it just doesn't feel right. That's when you need to step back and identify, where am I at right now? That should be a question you should be asking yourself if you audibly receive guidance and you audibly get guidance and you feel like edgy and antsy. Because a lot of times, if you feel that, then it's not coming from that higher light and that higher source. So when that happens and you feel that edgy and that antsiness right when you hear the voice or the guidance or connect to what is audibly being thought, you need to step back and really identify where you're at. And then from there, take time to go into silence so that the mind can find itself in rest, so that your heart can find itself in peace, and so that your body can be present to the actual audible guidance that it's going to come from source itself. All right, another way to receive guidance is through visuals. It's another, I love all the ways I receive guidance, but for me as a little girl, a lot of my guidance came audibly, and then it opened up to visual, and then it opened up to the knowing, and then it opened up to the other different ways that I receive. Sometimes I smell stuff, and that's how I connect to the guidance. Sometimes I see it in my eyes, but it's not necessarily that I see it in front of me. It's as if I see things forming and showing themselves into what's next and what's coming. And the thing that I'm going to go, sidestep here and just talk about that a little bit more before we go into the visual, receiving guidance through visions. All of us have a set way. All of us have a gift, an ability to connect with source. All of us have thank you, I love it. All of us have the toolkit to receive and connect to intuitive guidance and to divine love. All of us. But we all receive it very differently. Our points of access, thank you, our points of access are very different, and it's deliberate, it's intentional. Our points of access are unique to us because it's in correspondence to our personalities, it's in correspondence to who we are, it's in correspondence to what's happening in our lives, it's in correspondence with that. So it's perfect and ideal with how it shows up for you uniquely. I meet a lot of people that are like, oh, I wish I could get a knowing, or I wish I could hear, or I wish I could get a visual. And they get so stuck in trying to fine tune what they want that they bypass and ignore what's already being received. The beautiful thing is that when you take time to receive, allow, and really engage from that point of access that is unique to you, you organically open up yourself to receive guidance very clearly. And when you do that, the beautiful thing is, thank you, and what they're audibly saying is like you open up like a flower, you open up to receive different forms of guidance. So let's say your gift is visual, right? Visions. And that's how you've been getting your intuitive guidance. That's how you connect to, what's next. That's how you connect to what the angels are sharing. So if you take time to honor that form of communication, to feed into that, to appreciate that, to honor that, to act upon that, organically you open up other forms of channel, other forms of connection, other forms of communication. And it could be that the next experience and expression is your audible, your hearing, or the knowing. The thing is that when we celebrate who we are, when we celebrate where we're at, when we celebrate the gift we've been given from that point of gratitude, that's when we open up to all the other ways of communication that allows us to connect to intuitive guidance. All right, so let's go back to the visual. So the visual for me could be a little tricky. I personally feel that when I get a lot of visions, which I love the visions and I love when they're storylines, sometimes it's hard because visuals they can be interpreted. Let me say it like that. Visuals can be interpreted. So when I do my appointments, when I do my sessions, when I work with someone, I sometimes get visuals that my mind can very easily identify what they mean. But when I talk to somebody and I share the visual and I really offer them what's been given from that place, their interpretation of the visual can be very different than what my mind would have taken the interpretation for. So when you get visuals, just like I've been guiding for all of them, you're going to go ahead. I suggest you write it down. You give it a voice, visual, and just be very present in describing in detail the visual that you're connecting to. Then you're going to move down into identifying what emotions are being triggered, what emotions are coming up. And then from there, thank you, they're saying, what is the knowing that is being received? Now, I know I'm adding a little knowing here from other ways of receiving guidance, but that's what they're audibly saying, that everyone who connects to visual guidance will have the trigger of the feeling. A feeling will be triggered, and then there will be a knowing that's deep down in your belly. There'll be a knowing that will be felt. So for those of you who connect to guidance through visual, it's about you taking the time to, again, identify, get the visual, connect to it, write it down, give it voice, and then let yourself feel what is being triggered from the visual. Then take the deep breaths and then notice the knowing that is behind it. What knowing comes up? What thoughts come up about the visual? And then from there, thank you, they're audibly saying, from there, surrender and invite the action of Source Divine to continue to show you the way. The reason that's significant and the reason that's powerful is because the visual can be interpreted a lot more than the others. And I know this could be argued. I get it. Many people may have different perspectives of it, and that's perfect. But understanding that from what I can share is that when we connect to visuals, our mind is going to trigger back into our, like, thank you. They're showing me like a catalog, like, you know, in the libraries, the old libraries, when we used to go ahead and look it up and we'd pull up the card. So it goes through our catalog, right? It goes through our catalog. What have I experienced? What had happened in my, you want me to say it different? So what's been in my history, what's been in my past that I can connect this visual to? So that's why when you get your visual, if you write it down, you identify the emotions, it's about when you feel the emotion saying, is this from the moment or is this from my past? And then audibly ask yourself that question. Is this from the moment or is this from the past? And then you're going to go ahead and jot down whatever comes up. And it might be that you open up to even more visuals and write them down. And then say, what's the knowing behind this? And energy just moved out. What's the knowing behind this? And again, honor whatever comes up. It might be a thought. It might be another visual. Whatever comes up, just write it down. And they're showing me fears coming up about this because some of you and a lot of you might have been getting visuals and then you act upon them, and then those could be the ones that have had the most challenge in seeing the results being aligned with what you perceive was your highest. So that being said, when you get the visuals, one thing to lead you into, like, how do I know this is from Source? How do I know this is from my soul? How do I know this is being guided for me to act upon it? Again, those questions, right? What feelings are coming up? Is this from the now or is this from the past? And then what's the knowing behind it? And then from there, notice what's surrendered. Notice what is given. Notice what comes up. The reason I keep going from here, because they're showing me that knowing coming through and speaking, that knowing coming through and showing, that knowing coming through and delivering the knowing that is being sought out for. And I know there's other ways of connecting and different, it's a lot. I would be here with you for probably over an hour if I talked about all the different ways that you can connect to guidance. But these are some of the tools that you can step into in knowing, right? And knowing what is being encouraged and what isn't. So I'm going to give you one last thing, and this is for everybody, any way that you receive guidance. One of the things that I practice, if I find my mind doubting, if I find my mind trying to figure things out, or like, oh, maybe this isn't what I'm being encouraged to do, maybe I should wait, maybe so on and so forth. Actually, thank you. They're saying two. They want me to share the two things that I do. I was going to share one, but they're saying two. So the first thing I do is that I ask for 3 signs to confirm, and also what I call affirmations from the universe. I invite 3 affirmations from the universe, but it is it's essential. It's so important that you do not decide in advance how those need to look. People, loved ones, earth angels, we are creators. So if you're identifying how that sign needs to show up, the paradox of that is that that could be coming from source, but that could also be coming from your inner source creating the sign. So when you invite the 3 affirmations from the universe, do not specify how it needs to look and what it needs to fall into. Because when you do that, your mind can create the circumstances that will provide you the feedback that may not necessarily be aligned with what is being offered from divine, your angels, and love. So when you invite, you surrender. Just say, one thing I do is I give me 3 affirmations from the universe that really, really bypass any doubt, bypass any apprehensions I might have. Just make it so clearly that I'm like, this is it. An affirmation so clearly that my mind cannot talk itself out of unless I really, really try hard to talk myself out of. So again, 3 affirmations from the universe. Do not define them. Allow them to come in. Surrender. Detach from how it needs to look, what it needs to show up. Just allow it to show up in a way that will surprise you, amaze you, inspire you, and encourage you to take action. And then another thing that I do, and actually I just did this yesterday, I take time and I put myself in a state of receptivity. The way I do that is that I begin by taking in deep breaths, and then I go into meditation. For some of you, if it's a little more challenging, you could do a guided meditation and then let yourself be in silence. So I put myself in meditation. I love my sound bowls, so I'll play my sound bowls and I'll sit with that and enjoy that. And then I start having the conversation. I say, okay, I'm being guided, or I feel like I'm being guided to do this or do that, or let go of this and act on this. So I identify what my mind is perceiving. And then from there, in my journal, I have my little journal, I open it up, and I start having that conversation. I say, this is what I'm perceiving. What is being said? What is being shared? And I just let myself have that conversation. The questions vary. The topics vary. The way I move forward with the conversation varies. I just let myself be very authentic and where I'm at, what I'm feeling, what's coming up, and I speak it out loud. I speak it. And every time I say something, every time I ask a question, anytime anything comes up, I write what I'm identifying. I write my question out. I write the thoughts that are coming up. And then I sit in silence and let myself receive. And I write everything that comes through, whether it's a visual, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a sensation, whether it's a knowing, whatever comes through, I write it down. Allowing myself to open up those portals fully and completely into receiving. And again, that's another exercise that I do to help me fine tune what is being offered. So once I'm done writing all the guidance down, I say thank you. I celebrate in gratitude that I was able to connect and allow myself to receive. And then I wait 2 hours to go back to read everything. Again, that's allowing my mind to kind of liberate itself from attaching to what was given. And I just let myself just surrender what was given and offered. And then I come back in 2 hours from a place in which I'm just going to read it, right? I'm just going to read it from that place in which I'm like, okay, I'm going to read what was offered and given during that time. And sometimes I even wait, after the 2 hours, sometimes I wait 1 or 2 days and then reread it. And allow my mind to engage with what was offered, what was connected to during that time, from a place in which I can be really available to what was offered. So again, I just did it yesterday. I read my notes last night, and I'll be doing it again here tomorrow, reading the notes over, just to further cement some of the clarity and the guidance that I received. So I hope this helped, and I trust that all of you are receiving your guidance and really enjoying the experience of being connected and receiving that divine inspiration, whichever way it's showing up for you. Again, the first thing into really knowing what to do is get out of your head. Get out of your head and stop doubting that you can't receive guidance. They're saying I'm saying it wrong, so let me go ahead and correct myself. Move away from doubting. Move away from not trusting that you can receive guidance. Release those fears. And then secondly, speak, ask, invite for clarity to move in. Then pay attention. And then once you get to the guidance and connect to the guidance and receive different forms of guidance, whichever way it shows up for you, If you still feel doubt, go ahead and do the 2 things I shared, which is, again, inviting the affirmations from the universe, and then allowing yourself to go into silence and have that conversation via writing in a journal and notice what comes up. I hope that helped, and I hope that that has given you a glimpse into better understanding how divine guidance speaks and how to know. I recognize that this conversation can go a lot deeper and it can express a lot more, but because of our way of communication right now in our time, I can only share a little bit. So if you're interested in getting more information and learning how to fine-tune your own intuition, how to better connect, how to better talk, how to see more of the angels, ascended lights, and how to hear more guidance, how to feel more guidance, whichever way resonates with you, please feel free to contact me at Emily, the Angel Coach, or just visit the website, theangelcoach.com. All right, much love. Have an amazing day. Mwah. Thank you for your time. Bye.